Hi, guitar friends. Today, I'm going to talk about the difference between chords and scales. Or is there a difference between chords and scales? Maybe not. In a lot of current jazz literature, to learn how to improvise, we hear the term often these days, language, which means learning particular lines or techniques or entire solos by transcribing them by the previously great improvisers, whether it be anywhere from Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, and many others, to learn what they're doing, how they're playing over chord changes, what the technique is, and that's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, the proponents of learning how to improvise primarily by transcription tend to speak negatively of the idea of scales, as if people are learning to play scales. If you're playing over, say, a B-flat major 7, you're going to play obviously, not that you can't make that sound okay, but it doesn't sound like traditional jazz or bebop or even more modern forms. And the idea then is that you should avoid scales. I mean, maybe learn them for technique, but avoid them when you're improvising. The way I see it, though, is that there really isn't any difference between chords and scales. And chords are generally a combination of notes that you're hearing played by a piano player or a guitar player, or implied by a bass player, that the soloist, whether it be a horn player, guitar player, piano player, any instrument, is playing single note lines over. But the thing is if you have something like, say here, it's a 4-note version of an E-flat major 7 sharp 11 chord. Now, if we were to consider this in kind of the language way, you've got lines that are circling in on notes. You've got arpeggios in there. But the chord itself has certain notes in it. Let's just say in relation to the note E flat, you've got a root, a sharp 4, major 7, and the third. Now the sharp 4 now becomes a sharp 11 because we have a 7 in the chord. Now that implies various things, but if we're looking at it in terms of tertian chords built into thirds, you have the root, the third G, the root is E flat, the fifth, which is B flat, major 7 is D. Now you can put on any kind of 9, 11, 13 that you want, but in this case we'll put a natural 9. The chord has a sharp 11 and a natural 13. Now taking the notes of the chord, playing them one at a time like that is called an arpeggio. Now we can't play all 7 notes at once on the guitar, but we can play 6 or 5 and 4 and get close to it by moving it around. And it's essentially an E-flat major 7 chord with its upper voices. Now if I play an E-flat Lydian mode which is built on the 4th degree of a B-flat major scale, etc. But we have the same exact notes, but instead of built in thirds, they're built in seconds. And so a chord and a scale contain the same notes, so they're the same thing. And I think that if we look at them as the same thing, we're not going to be thinking of scales in a completely linear way all the time. We'll see them as different colors on a chord that don't necessarily have to be played sequentially. The kind of things that you learn from so-called language by transcribing solos by the greats are what they do to resolve or create tension on chords by adding in notes that may or may not be in the original scale/chord. And that's wonderful. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, because scales are crucial. And the other word that's often used for scales is modes. Modes are the additional scales that are built off of each scale degree of the original mode. For instance, if you have a B-flat harmonic minor scale, which implies, of course, has the notes of a B-flat minor major 7 with 9, with 11, and with a flat 13 being the same thing as a chord. Its modes are built are the same notes, but starting on every scale degree. So if you start the first scale on B flat, the second one would start on C, using the same exact notes, and D flat, etc., etc., and that gives you the chords that would be, in that particular key, if you will. So I think it's really crucial to learn as many scales and modes as possible, because then you'll learn as many chords as possible, because they're the same thing. And basically, like an artist, you have more colors to paint with. A chord like this, which you can think of as a G major triad with an E flat in the bass, I'm playing that same. I'm not playing the same anything. I'm playing an E flat Lydian with a sharp 9 in it. That sharp 9 being an F sharp, and that'll give us the D triad, D flat in the bass. Of course, there's many other things you can play over that as well. But really what I'm talking about today is really that the seasoned improviser should have at her or his disposal as many different scales and modes as possible, and all the chords that come from them, so that you can really hear the difference, the subtle little differences between some things like, say, from a major and a harmonic major, harmonic major. Here's to chords and scales being the same entity. Talk to you soon.